Adding a second ground rod in this application will not cause any harm. There are several reasons to consider adding a second ground rod. Firstly, improved grounding effectiveness can be achieved. Adding a second ground rod can reduce grounding impedance and improve the overall grounding system. Secondly, it provides redundancy and enhances safety. In the event that one ground rod is damaged or compromised, the second rod provides a backup grounding path for equipment in both buildings. Thirdly, code compliance may be a factor. In some jurisdictions, multiple ground rods may be required for certain electrical installations. When installing a second ground rod, keep the following tips in mind. Distance from the existing rod is important. Install the second rod at least 6 feet away from the existing rod to avoid mutual interference. The depth of the rod is also crucial. Drive the rod at least 8 feet into the ground, or as deep as the local soil conditions allow. Bonding is also necessary. Bond the second rod to the existing grounding system using a copper conductor of at least number 6 American wire gauge. Regarding the existing ground rod found on the surface, it is unusual for a ground rod to be found on the surface of the ground. If the grounding system is not functioning properly, it is important to have a qualified electrician inspect and repair it. Instead of digging up and replacing the existing ground rod, another option to consider is using a grounding clamp to connect the new rod to the existing ground wire below ground level. The purpose of a ground rod is to provide a low impedance path to earth for fault currents, protecting people and equipment from electrical shock and damage. A properly installed grounding system ensures that in the event of a fault, the current will flow safely to ground, tripping a circuit breaker or fuse and disconnecting a power supply. When a single ground rod is used, its effectiveness can be limited by soil conditions such as high resistivity, which can impede the flow of current to ground. Adding a second ground rod in parallel with the first reduces the overall impedance of the grounding system, providing a more reliable and effective path for fault currents. This is especially important in situations where sensitive electronic equipment is used, as it can help to minimize the risk of damage from voltage surges and other electrical disturbances. The National Electrical Code, or NEC, provides guidelines for grounding and bonding electrical systems to ensure safety and prevent electrical hazard. While the NEC does not always require multiple ground rods, it does specify certain conditions under which they may be necessary or beneficial. For example, NEC section 250.53 A2 states that if a single ground rod does not have a resistance to ground of 25 ohms or less, a second ground rod must be installed. This requirement is intended to ensure that the grounding system is capable of effectively dissipating fault currents and protecting people and equipment. When installing multiple ground rods, it is important to follow the guidelines in NEC section 250.56, which specifies the minimum spacing between ground rods. The NEC requires that ground rods be spaced at least 6 feet apart to avoid mutual interference, which can reduce their effectiveness. The 6-foot spacing helps ensure that each ground rod is able to effectively dissipate fault currents into the surrounding soil without being affected by the presence of other ground rods. In addition to spacing, the depth of the ground rods is also important. The NEC requires that ground rods be driven at least 8 feet into the ground unless rock bottom is encountered. This depth is necessary to ensure that the ground rod is in contact with a sufficient amount of soil to provide a low impedance path to ground. If rock bottom is encountered before the ground rod can be driven to a depth of 8 feet, the ground rod can be buried horizontally in a trench that is at least 30 inches deep. The type and size of the conductor used to bond the ground rods together is also important. The NEC requires that the bonding conductor be made of copper or other corrosion-resistant material and that it be sized according to NEC Table 250.66, which specifies the minimum size of grounding electrode conductors based on the size of the service entrance conductors. The bonding conductor must be securely connected to each ground rod using a listed connector or clamp. In some cases, it may be necessary to use more than 2 ground rods to achieve the desired grounding impedance. This is particularly true in areas with high soil resistivity or where sensitive electronic equipment is used. In these situations, it may be necessary to install a ground grid, which consists of a network of interconnected ground rods and conductors that are buried in the ground. A ground grid provides a very low impedance path to ground and can effectively protect against electrical hazards. When installing a ground grid, it is important to consult with a qualified electrical engineer to ensure that the system is properly designed and installed. The design of a ground grid should take into account the specific soil conditions, the type of equipment being protected, and the applicable electrical codes and standards. In addition to ground rods and ground grids, other types of grounding electrodes can also be used, such as metal water pipes, metal building frames, and concrete encased electrodes. However, these types of grounding electrodes may not always be suitable for all applications, and it is important to consult with a qualified electrician to determine the best type of grounding electrode for a particular situation. Metal water pipes can be used as grounding electrodes, but only if they are in direct contact with the earth for at least 10 feet. Metal building frames can also be used as grounding electrodes, but only if they are effectively grounded to the earth. Concrete encased electrodes, also known as UV grounds, consist of a length of bare copper conductor that is encased in concrete. UV grounds are typically installed in the footings or foundations of buildings and can provide a very effective grounding path. Proper grounding and bonding are essential for electrical safety and can help to prevent electrical shock, fire, and equipment damage. It is important to have a qualified electrician inspect and test your grounding system regularly to ensure that it is functioning properly. A qualified electrician can use specialized equipment to measure the resistance to ground of your grounding system and can identify any potential problems. If you are unsure about the condition of your grounding system, it is always best to err on the side of caution and have it inspected by a professional. The presence of a ground rod lying on the surface instead of being properly driven into the ground is a clear indication that the grounding system is not functioning as intended. This situation can compromise the safety of the electrical system and increase the risk of electrical hazards. It is crucial to address this issue promptly to ensure the safety of people and equipment. The primary function of a ground rod is to provide a low impedance path for fault currents to flow back to the source, thereby tripping a circuit breaker or fuse and energizing the circuit. When a ground rod is not properly installed, it may not be able to effectively perform this function, which can lead to dangerous situations. For example, if a fault occurs in an appliance or piece of equipment, the fault current may not be able to flow safely to ground, which can result in a voltage buildup on the equipment's chassis or enclosure. This voltage buildup can pose a serious shock hazard to anyone who comes into contact with the equipment. In addition to shock hazards, a faulty grounding system can also increase the risk of fire. If a fault current is not able to flow safely to ground, it may instead flow through other conductive paths such as building materials or gas pipes, which can cause them to overheat and ignite. Therefore, it is essential to ensure that all ground rods are properly installed and that the grounding system is functioning correctly. When a ground rod is found on the surface, there are several possible reasons for this. Firstly, the ground rod may have been improperly installed in the first place. For example, the ground rod may not have been driven deep enough into the ground, or it may have been driven into an area with rocky soil that prevented it from being properly seated. Secondly, the ground rod may have been dislodged by frost heave or other soil movement. In areas with cold winters, the ground can freeze and thaw repeatedly, which can cause the soil to expand and contract. This expansion and contraction can exert pressure on the ground rod, which can eventually cause it to be dislodged from the ground. Thirdly, the ground rod may have been damaged or corroded over time. Ground rods are typically made of copper or galvanized steel, which can corrode in certain soil conditions. Corrosion can weaken the ground rod and make it more susceptible to damage. Whatever the reason for the ground rod being on the surface, it is important to take corrective action to ensure the safety of the electrical system. The first step is to inspect the ground rod in the surrounding area to determine the extent of the damage. If the ground rod is simply loose, it may be possible to redrive it into the ground. However, if the ground rod is damaged or corroded, it will need to be replaced. When replacing a ground rod, it is important to choose a ground rod that is appropriate for the soil conditions in the area. For example, if the soil is highly corrosive, it may be necessary to use a ground rod made of stainless steel or other corrosion-resistant material. It is also important to ensure that the ground rod is driven deep enough into the ground to provide a low impedance path to ground. As mentioned earlier, the NEC requires that ground rods be driven at least 8 feet into the ground, unless rock bottom is encountered. Once the ground rod has been replaced, it is important to bond it to the existing grounding system using a copper conductor of the appropriate size. The bonding conductor should be securely connected to the ground rod and to the grounding electrode conductor using listed connectors or clamps. Finally, it is important to test the grounding system to ensure that it is functioning properly. This can be done using a ground resistance meter, which measures the resistance between the grounding electrode and the earth. The resistance to ground should be as low as possible, ideally less than 25 ohms. If the resistance to ground is too high, it may be necessary to install additional ground rods or to take other measures to improve the grounding system. In addition to addressing the ground rod issue, it is also important to ensure that all other aspects of the electrical system are properly grounded and bonded. This includes ensuring that all metal enclosures, such as electrical panels and junction boxes, are properly bonded to the grounding system. It also includes ensuring that all electrical equipment, such as appliances and machinery, are properly grounded. Proper grounding and bonding are essential for electrical safety and can help to prevent electrical shock, fire, and equipment damage. It is important to have a qualified electrician inspect and test your grounding system regularly to ensure that it is functioning properly. Furthermore, the distance of 30 feet between the two buildings is relevant for considering the grounding and bonding requirements. The NEC addresses the requirements for grounding and bonding separately derived systems, which are electrical systems that receive power from a source other than the main service. If the two buildings are served by separate feeders from the same meter socket, they may be considered separately derived systems, depending on the specific configuration of the electrical system. If the buildings are considered separately derived systems, the NEC requires that each building have its own grounding electrode system, which may include ground rods, metal water pipes, or other approved grounding electrodes. The grounding electrode system must be bonded to the building's main grounding bus by using a grounding electrode conductor of the appropriate size. In addition to the grounding electrode system, the NEC also requires that all metal parts of the electrical system, such as conduits, enclosures, and equipment, be bonded together to form a continuous electrical path to ground. This bonding helps to ensure that fault currents can flow safely back to the source, tripping a circuit breaker or fuse and energizing the circuit. The NEC specifies the minimum size of the bonding conductors based on the size of the circuit conductors. It is important to follow the NEC requirements for grounding and bonding to ensure the safety of the electrical system. Improper grounding and bonding can increase the risk of electrical shock, fire, and equipment damage. In summary, adding a second ground rod is generally beneficial and often recommended for improving the effectiveness and safety of the grounding system. Ensure proper installation techniques are followed, including spacing, depth, and bonding, and address any existing issues with the current grounding system. Always consult with a qualified electrician for specific guidance based on local codes and conditions.